Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to the Port of Hueneme Oxnard Harbor District Port Infrastructure Workshop as part of the 2030 Strategic Plan. Today's meeting is a 2-hour session following a session last night covering the community and environment pillars. And we had a great turnout last night, and I see many of the same names here today. So thank you for your passion and interest in the Port of Hueneme and helping to formulate the next 10 years strategic plan for the port. I will cover a couple of meeting mechanics, and then we'll get into the presentation. So this is a virtual 2-hour session hosted on the Zoom webinar platform. There is a chat feature that is always open. It's open now and will remain open the entire meeting. And you may use that to submit your comments or questions, and you may do so in any language you choose. We also have simultaneous translation into Spanish and Mixteco. So on your Zoom control bar, there should be an option called interpretation, where you can select the language you wish to listen to. And later on, when we have the opportunity to hear any comments from you, please, go slowly so our interpreters can have time to transition. And also, please just be patient with us as we move through the presentation at a pace that is allows for everyone to participate. There will be some sections where we have live polling pop up on your screen. You'll be able to make a multiple choice selection. And of course, if you have any questions or comments now or after the presentation, you may reach out to Donna Lacayo or Miguel Rodriguez, whose emails are provided to you on the screen in this presentation. This brief agenda, and then we'll dive right in. We'll have a welcome and introduction from the CEO of the Port of Hueneme. We'll give an overview of the Strategic Plan 2030 update process to date and what we expect to continue from here to the end of the process. Then we're going to do a deep dive into the infrastructure pillar, and that'll be the bulk of today's meeting, followed by a hear from you and feedback, which together with the infrastructure pillar, that is the meat of the meeting, where we really want to get your input. And then we'll close with what the next steps are going to be in the strategic plan process. So with that, I'd like to welcome Kristen Dekas, the Executive Director and CEO of the Port of Hueneme.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad that we can convene today and really roll up our sleeves and dig in and look at how we're going to develop the port to be the maximize its productivity, efficiency for the end users, our customers, and how we look at how we kind of migrate into a new world of containers and automobiles out into the next 10 years while being sensitive to environmental sustainability and community concerns and questions. So with that, I thought I'd start with a quote that we have from Abraham Lincoln that I think is very fitting. "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." And I think what that highlights is the importance of planning and coming up with a good, solid plan so that you can make informed decisions for a very bright future. And that's what today is all about. And with that, I believe we do have Commissioner Hodge on the line. He was going to try and drop in and give a quick hello and welcome. Commissioner Hodge, are you able to join us? I see him there.
I believe he's on, but I'm not sure if he's able to hear us.
Okay, let me send him.
And it looks like his microphone is muted as well.
Okay.
Right.
Let's see.
Okay. It may actually not be him, Kristen. It may be Ms. Keenan.
Okay. Well, if he joins, we'll when he has the opportunity, I know he's at the fire station, so if he's able to jump on, he'll give some quick remarks when he has the opportunity. So with that, I'll just kind of to kick the meeting off. There's a couple things that I wanted to share. One, for the edifice of all of those on the call or the webinar with us today, I'd like to share that we're pleased on Monday, this Monday from 10 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll be hosting a vaccination site. It will be the J&J shot. There's no registration required till you get on site, and you just need proof of eligibility when you get here. So again, that will be on Monday from 10 to 3 o'clock. So it's available to you, your families, anyone that's eligible for the vaccination. So please take advantage of that opportunity if you would like to. The other thing I would like to share is just kind of start here and kick off with leadership. Most of you, I believe, that are with us today are customers, understand the governance model, but I think it's important to note that this is the current configuration of our board. Leadership starts at the top here, and I want you all to know how vested our leadership is in the success of the port and your successes here and your business platforms. As well as representing the constituents of the community, having that profound relationship work so that our successes at the port are shared with the community as well. We are celebrating 83 years. For those of you not quite sure, our harbor commissioners are all elected officials. They are elected at large, and they do need to reside in this geopolitical boundary to be able to serve as harbor commissioners. So that includes the city of Oxnard, the city of Port Hueneme, and the unincorporated areas and the beach communities in our county to have the right residence criteria to be able to serve as harbor commissioner. And the terms, for your awareness, are 4-year terms, and they are staggered. So you'll have 2 harbor commissioners up in 1 year, and then in another 2 years, you'll have another 3 commissioners up for re-election. So that's how the governance structures work. If you could jump to the next slide, Josh, I appreciate it. So that kind of drives our motto and our DNA and who we are as a port community. We're not really here to become a rich port. We do have about $89 million in assets that we have to reinvest in, build up to make sure that we're sustainable for the future. But our real mission is to enrich the community by the business that by attracting the businesses that are here with us this afternoon that really create that economic prosperity, that job growth, and then of course create economic and social good for our community. You can look at the bottom kind of text here, but it's important to note that this is right out of our bylaws, and our mission embraces constructing, operating, and controlling and developing harbor facilities so that we can have global trade and have a strong presence for our customers around the world and have all those hub and spoke components so important to global trade and our success as a port community. The other important highlight as we move into this discussion today, there seems to be a very robust agenda coming out of Washington in terms of investments in infrastructure. Big money, and it's a real opportunity, I think, being residents here in California to be able to secure this funding and really take hold of the opportunities that are going to be in the pipeline. And I think there'll be a nice stream of funding opportunity coming to the state of California. And we want to make sure that we're ready. Our projects are well defined. They're built into our transportation plans so that we can really aggressively secure this funding. So I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities on the horizon. So we just got to roll up our sleeves, kind of look at what it is we need to do, and then let's go get it done. So with that, I will turn it over to back to Josh.
Great, thank you, Kristen. And now I'd like to introduce Dana Lacayo, Chief Commercial Officer at the Port of Hueneme.
Thank you, Josh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to go over some of the highlights of what we saw happen during last year during COVID. Most of us were not sure which way the economy was going to go with all the closures that were happening. So we were anticipating a a very slow recovery, maybe even for the auto segment, as OEM had to close down their operations in the months of March and April. We saw some of the worst months in the auto segment for us in May and June of last year. However, the recovery seems to be very strong, and we're seeing some of the numbers to be through March, July through March of this year compared to the same time period last year. Those numbers are pretty in line with where they were and even a little bit higher. So the economy is recovering very strong. The agriculture sector, or the perishable fresh fruit segment, which accounts for about 30% of the port's revenue, actually remained steady overall throughout COVID. As grocery stores were open, the port remained open 24/7. Longshore workers were working day and night without a stop. So that segment actually grew. And autos accounted for about 14% drop because of the closures due to COVID. But this year we're seeing, as I said, a strong recovery. Now, what does it mean for the economic impact in the county? Through studies, we have found that over 15,000 jobs are connected to the port. About 1,700 of them are direct jobs in Oxnard and Port Hueneme. And as we grow, the economic impact in the job opportunities for family sustaining jobs grow. The economic value of the port's activity is over $1.7 billion, and the annual cargo has grown from over $9 billion of cargo value annually to now $10.85 billion. We operate inside of the port on approximately 120 acres. However, when you consider the acres we have off port for the private facilities of our customers, some of them are leased, a lot of them are owned. There's about 550 acres overall port processing and storage area. We own the railway, the Ventura County Railway that connects to Union Pacific and Oxnard, currently operated by Genesee and Wyoming. The refrigeration segment is a high growth segment for us, and with the congestion in LA, Long Beach, and Oakland, we have seen a lot of customers wanting to come to Hueneme to make sure their cargo continues to move efficiently. On-dock refrigeration now accounts for 176,000 square feet. And when we look at the reefer plugs or the electricity plugs that are needed for refrigerated containers, those are over 1,000 now that include our 299 on dock, and then customers' facilities and third-party facilities off port. Next slide, please, Josh. So as we were mentioning, this year to date looks very positive. These are numbers for our current fiscal year 2021 through July through March. For the auto segment, combined with high and heavy cargo, we're seeing about 2% growth compared to same time last year. Fruits, some of the congestion is really helping us grow that particular segment. So 4% up compared to last year. We're handling more containers than we ever have before. As our customers have gone completely into containers, we are also seeing some of the citrus business that's coming back here into break bulk reefer ships to Asia. Overall operating revenue, because of that cargo growth, has grown over 4%. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donna. We'd now like to turn to a recap of the prior strategic plan, the 2020 plan, which was put together in 2015. It had 5 main pillars: economic vitality, environment, innovation and technology, community, and marketing. And within each pillar, it had a number of strategies or projects that were identified to pursue. And a 5-year plan was long enough to accomplish many tasks, but not long enough, perhaps, to accomplish all of them, which is the sign of a well-defined and ambitious plan. Almost be disappointing if they accomplished everything that they sought to in 5 years. But some of the highlights include channel deepening to increase the harbor depth to 40 feet, and the front of berth 1 as well. The exception of was dredged to 40 feet. There's some parts of berth 2 right in front of the Del Monte warehouse that still have not been dredged, and berths 4 and 5 as well are pending. But the port was able to dredge deep enough to handle larger size vessels. It did that in part by receiving over 30 million in grant funds from state and federal sources between 2007 and 2020, really allowing it to invest well above its weight in terms of its overall revenue or operating earnings by being very aggressive in the grants sector. On the environment, it implemented the shore power system to plug in the vessels that was partly responsible for an overall 85% reduction in diesel particulate emissions at the port. And invested in a reference grade air quality monitoring system to measure actual air quality as opposed to calculated or derived air quality. On the innovation side, it launched a MAST program, which then evolved into what's called FathomWorks, which is an innovative incubator program that's physically present at the Port of Hueneme. It's a really exciting startup incubator to allow for testing and the growth of new business ideas and new businesses. Working with the community, the port has to date held over 48 food distributions where it was able to donate more than 1 million pounds of fresh produce. So it's been a really active participant in the community and really working to improve the lives of those members who live in and around the port's area. And then with regard to educational partnerships, it formed a global trade and logistics course in partnership with the high school district. But there are things that the port wished to do that the 5 years wasn't long enough to do. Again, finishing the dredging, some traffic realignment. There are a number of remedial repairs that have been deferred that will likely need to be addressed in the coming 10 years. And there were off-terminal real estate transactions that were not consummated. In the meantime, the industry really evolved quite dramatically around it. And so the phasing out of reefer vessels and really the increase in containers is one of those trends. So those are some of the accomplishments and work in progress from where we were in the past that got us to where we are today. I'd now like to cover just briefly the 2030 plan and the process we're going through. We really kicked this off in January of 2020 with a meeting with the Port Operators Group, where we had many of the participants here today are members of the POG or Port Operators Group. That followed by a full year of one-on-one stakeholder interviews and discussions. There were more than 75 groups represented, more than 100 individuals, more than one individual from a group was participated in the conversations. And that represented more than 200 hours of outreach and discussions. More recently, the port has done an online and in-person community survey last month in March, which reached more than 500 participants. All of that has brought us, so that outreach effort has brought us to where we are today, yesterday and today, with these two workshops. Out of these workshops, the next step is to draft the strategic plan. There'll be a process of fine-tuning it, and then there will be a public hearing to review the draft plan, incorporate any comments, and it's anticipated that it would be adopted. The final plan will be adopted and passed by the board during this fiscal year, which ends in June of 2021, this year. Some of the feedback that we heard from those one-on-one discussions and the POG meeting, and indeed even in the survey, especially from customers and operators such as yourselves, was that infrastructure is the #1 priority of the customers and operators. There was a big emphasis on improving cargo efficiency and velocity. overall, and that the port's role in that really, first and foremost, not exclusively, but first and foremost, should be ensuring that the infrastructure that is available is adequate to the task. Along the same lines, there was a recognition that the environment and community are keys to the port's success. So there was a desire to see that the port's operations, and indeed all operations related to logistics, will take into account the environmental impact of their activities, and that the benefit included members of the community as well. There was a net desire to maintain the diverse cargo mix that exists at the port today. So there was not a consensus about focusing exclusively on one of the main cargo segments, containers, autos. The port also handles liquid bulk fertilizer. There's commercial fishing operations. So there's a diverse cargo mix, and there was a desire to see the port remain focused on niche markets, but a diversity of those markets. There was a recognition that safety is paramount, the safety and well-being of all of the participants, the workers, ILWU, all employees, staff, customers, and that the infrastructure, the attention paid to infrastructure should incorporate, safety as one of the design parameters. And finally, there was a recognition that the port must continue efforts to look off terminal because of the growing pains that the port has experienced. But there was also plenty to be done to rationalize and improve the on-terminal experience. So there was a desire to pursue both of those. Specifically to the online survey, I think one of the really interesting things here for the port, the commercial group here, users and customers of the port, is that the community has your back. They are in favor by a broad swath of majority of port expansion. They see, they recognize that port's expansion would lead to more job opportunities and more investment within the community. And they have heard that the growing pains will require a focus on the ability of the port and its partners to expand the infrastructure. And they heard that message and they're in favor of it. It's also interesting to note that more than 50% of the respondents were Spanish speaking. So it was a really broad section of the community around Port Hueneme, Oxnard, and the county. As we see on the next page, what they're asking for as return is that the port has the community's back. In the community surveys, the top two choices for the priorities were communication and involvement. So they wanted open and transparent communication, and they wanted the port to be an involved member of the community and vice versa. Those two ranked very high. The next two, which ranked equally highly to each other, is the port's role in economic vitality and job creation, together with environmental responsibility. And if you think about it, that matches what we heard in our stakeholder interviews, that the number one business of the port needs to be married with an awareness about the environmental impacts of its operations, but that there was broad support for continued robust activity at the port. We'll get into briefly, again, the 5 pillars, the new 5 pillars. There are 2 new pillars being proposed for this new 10-year plan. Infrastructure, which did not exist in the past and was, again, a number one concern for many of the stakeholders, is going to be a pillar of its own, and there'll be a series of strategies or projects that fall under the infrastructure pillar. And then the partnership pillar was broadened to reflect social equity, community, and partnership concepts, so that the well-being of the port and its customers translated into the well-being of the community and involved concepts around social equity. Today, as I said, we're going to focus on the infrastructure pillar. It'll be a deep dive. But of course, this presentation will be available likely on the port's website, along with last night's presentation, which focused on the environment and social equity and community partners pillars. So those will be available for you should you be interested. When thinking about the infrastructure pillar, it can be helpful to think about the categories of activities that might fall under that pillar. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but it's just a helpful categorization or creation of certain categories. So some of the possible categories within this plan would be remedial or replacement and maintenance, capex or investment in existing structures. It could be the commercial viability for autos or RoRo. It could be projects that contribute toward the commercial viability for containers. It could be any endeavors or efforts to improve efficiency, velocity, safety, or overall capabilities. And finally, there is a recognition that the infrastructure itself will need to evolve to enhance environmental sustainability and invest in green infrastructure. So with that, I'd like to introduce Christina Birdsey, the Chief Operating Officer of Port Hueneme, to cover some of the existing conditions that we find ourselves with today.
Thank you, Josh. Are you able to hear me okay? Super.
We hear you great.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for being here again. I just want to highlight the importance of making sure that we're moving in a direction that customers and stakeholders and community want us to go. So we really appreciate your time and energy here and giving the feedback so we make sure that we're moving in the right direction. Currently, the port has accomplished quite a bit in the last 5 years. And some of those highlights include, as Josh mentioned, 1,200 feet of wharf improvements and associated deepening in coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers for deepening the channel from that 35 feet to 40 feet. Our portion was completed in part due to a Tiger grant through the Department of Transportation. We also completed many deferred maintenance projects, which included repaving over 13 acres in part from an EDA grant. And we also demolished an obsolete on-dock warehouse to make room for improved cargo handling and strengthen the associated concrete pad. In collaboration with the Port of LA, we secured funding through the California Air Resources Board to purchase 2 electric UTRs. Those are the yard trucks that just move on port. And we are in process of installing the electrical infrastructure to charge those EUTRs, as well as the infrastructure to plug in our stevedores hybrid electric mobile harbor cranes. 3 of the 5 cranes on port currently are able to plug in. The port has been working hard to develop a master energy plan that will map out how to move toward our zero emission goals and what infrastructure is needed and the supply that is required from SCE, as well as any alternative energy fuel opportunities. We understand as we grow into the future that it must be done sustainably. Growing commerce through our port supplies family sustaining jobs, while we look forward to continuing to be a model of environmental stewardship here. All right, thank you, Josh. Next slide.
Great, thank you, Christina. Happy to take it from here. So we developed 2 possible subcategories of infrastructure. Again, within those 5 categories, we thought about what are some near-term and medium-term opportunities. And some near-term opportunities might take longer. Some mid-term opportunities might actually be relatively quick to develop. But in general, we thought that it's usually faster to focus. Well, so there's stuff we can do on terminal and off terminal as well. So, some of the things that one of the things we heard from the feedback is that it would be helpful to focus and concentrate containers and autos in their respective sections, as long as they each had sufficient room to undertake their operations. But that it was a challenge to combine operations and change operations. It was a necessary evil to accommodate the growth and success of the port, and it's been doing well. But as a long-term plan, there should be a plan in place to really try and rationalize each type of operation to the extent possible. So we have currently today, generally, the container operations are in the purple area, and the auto area operations are in the green areas. And it would be, this is the warehouse that was previously torn down, making room for, making more room available for vessel operations. In general, it's easier, more efficient, more effective to have an open space along the berth. And so, as part of the plan, there is a desire to see the eventual demolition or relocating of additional warehouses. There's this Del Monte warehouse 3A. This is actually warehouse 1B, but it's referred to potential longer term demolition. We certainly, any warehouse that's currently under use, we want those customers to have appropriate and efficient spaces available. But just looking longer term, it does make sense to try and prioritize container vessel operations on a nice, clean, and open quay. Let's see. So again, rationalize the use of land within existing terminal footprint. Try to the extent possible to really make the south side of the terminal reserved for container operations and the north side for ro-ro operations and project cargo. Looking longer term or midterm, there are a number of properties which are perhaps underutilized, again, within the footprint of the port. This area over here is port property. It's a number of buildings that are really not fully utilized at this point, I think would be fair to say. So there's an opportunity perhaps to turn it into some sort of campus or just other, anything would be more productive. It could be storage, it could be a campus. That's one idea. There are a number of remedial repairs that would need to be done probably over the coming 10 years, or at least incorporated somehow into a plan. Some of these buildings over here are at the end of their useful life. And there are also some pillars over here, wood pillars, about 10 to 15%, which are really either missing or damaged beyond repair, that should eventually be addressed. There are also a number of spaces that could be incorporated into a little bit more productive storage use. And in fact, there could be an opportunity to relocate buildings that are on terminal to either off terminal or nearby or another location, thereby freeing up additional storage for autos or containers. Some of that storage for autos could be the vertical parking lot structure. And so that is a project that is being contemplated. And certainly freeing up of additional storage capacity, productive capacity, is going to, we're going to need to do that over the coming 10 years so that the port can remain commercially viable and vibrant, and in fact, improve the efficiency. And there's other buildings that could potentially be looked at relocating, especially if there's a campus created. And there's some adjacent properties that the port has been endeavoring to incorporate into its footprint or of activities. And so that is, that's an ongoing effort. And then later on, when we get into the environmental pillar, there are a number of electrical infrastructure things that will need to be addressed. So I believe this is the part of the evening or the day where we have a number of online poll questions prepared that we'd like to submit to you. And again, please bear with us as we go slowly enough to record your responses and accommodate any translations. So Donna, I think we're starting with question 14. So
Fun.
thank you.
Thank you.
This is a question of ranking of priorities and it's multiple choice. So please select all that are important to you. We have A, remedial or replacement maintenance investment in existing structures, on-terminal vertical auto storage, off-terminal auto storage, demolishing the warehouses, investing in STS gantry cranes as opposed to the mobile harbor cranes. These are permanently rail-mounted gantry cranes on the south terminal for handling containers. F, dedicated on-terminal container storage. G, traffic flow. Or H, electrical infrastructure. So please select all that are important to you.
I'm seeing the numbers move. Thank you, everyone, for voting. We have almost 50% having voted so far. So let's give it a little more time so most of you can vote. I will share the results after this so you can all see it. Okay, maybe another 10, 15 seconds. About 70% of you have voted so far. Okay, it stopped moving, so I'm going to go ahead and end the polling now and show you the results. It's interesting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, interesting. All right, so fully 69% of you thought that electrical infrastructure was important. And indeed, that is going to be an important component. There's going to be a lot of demand for electricity, not just at the port, but going forward with some of the state of California mandates. There's, with not just in the goods movement industry, but just more broadly across the way we live in this state is going to be driven by higher electrical consumption. So that's very interesting finding. The next highest category was on-terminal vertical auto storage at 51%. And a tie with traffic flow at 51% as well. And followed very closely, so kind of lumped together with remedial and replacement maintenance capex of existing structures. Very interesting. A little bit smaller, but more than a third, looking at the warehouses, the gantry cranes, and the container storage. Great. Let's move on to question 1, I believe.
You should be able to see it now. Yeah?
Yes. So where should we invest first as part of a long-term strategy? Should we consider separating autos and containers? Yes or no?
Very active polling. Thank you. Almost 50% have voted already. So we're almost there. Okay, let's take about 5-10 more seconds. I think most of you have voted. Let's see if we can get as many as possible. This is very interesting. Okay, I will go ahead and post the result. Let's see.
Great. 79% suggest yes, the port should consider as part of its long-term strategy separating autos and containers. So thank you. It sounds like there is a consensus that that is, ideally the way to go.
Okay, I will go ahead with the next question, Josh.
Thank you. Over the midterm, should the port densify on-terminal storage, such as using vertical auto parking structures, building reefer racks, or creating more storage space for cargo?
Okay, interesting. Okay, about half of you have voted. Let's keep voting, please.
Including this question, we have 5. So we have this plus 4 more. Then we'll move on to another section of the presentation.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more votes coming in. I have only 61% having voted, but hardly moving at this point. So let's allow for 5-10 more seconds. So if anyone hasn't voted, they could now, and I will post the results. Okay, let's go ahead and see this.
Okay, wow. It's a resounding consensus, yes. 90%, please intensify on-terminal storage uses. Thank you.
Okay, I have one more. I'm sorry, 2 more.
Yeah. Over the midterm, should STS ship-to-shore gantry cranes be part of the next 10-year plan? Yes or no? And many of you, as the port operating community, are familiar with the distinction. Of course, if you're not, happy to explain it, but these are as opposed to the mobile harbor cranes that are currently in use at the port. And while we're waiting, I do want to note that there's a question from the audience about how we're looking with regard to accommodating this year's fresh blueberry season, which requires a cold treatment, excluding that from Peru, and including on-site reefer tech capability, et cetera. So it's a great question, and certainly, cold treatment is part of handling reefer goods is vitally important. And so we'll make sure to make a note of that question. We'll definitely make sure that as part of the long-term plan, the port has an answer for cold treatment. And then if we're able to get an answer to you, we will do so in as quickly as possible.
I will go ahead and close the polling and show you the results.
Okay, 84% think that STS gantry cranes should be part of the next 10-year plan. Thank you very much. That's a very resounding yes.
Okay, one more.
Should the port pursue a vertical auto parking structure? Yes or no? And while you're voting, again, another question or comment from the audience. Since electric power is going to be the primary need in the future, what is the port doing to reduce its future costs for electric power? This writer assumes that the port passes on its power costs to its customers who use the power through metering. And if not, has the port thought of doing so? There's a question about how can the port ensure that there's enough power feeding its users and its own uses, and then making sure that that's cost effective.
Okay, we're coming up on a minute here. About 64% have voted so far. Let's see if we can get a few more votes before we close this as well.
Right. Well, while we're waiting, there's another commentator who asked, who suggested that the port should consider looking at cold storage facilities and the new refrigeration projects happening now. If you want to drop in the chat some of those projects you'd like us to consider, please do so. I know that a number of the participants here probably are involved in those as well. So, okay, so the results, 93% are favored vertical auto parking structure. Very interesting results. Thank you. Thank you everyone for marking your preferences. And now I'd like to hand it over.
I'm sorry,
oh,
Josh.
we have one more. Sorry.
I actually noticed that we have 2 more midterm questions.
Okay, please,
Okay,
go
can
for
you
it.
do that? Thank you, sorry.
Should the port relocate buildings in order to make room for more cargo operations? Let's see if we can get this, get that reset.
Oh, are you able to actually vote on it, or do I need to I think
No, I think the voting is closed on that one.
Oh, you should be able to now.
Here we go now, yes. Okay, so should the port relocate buildings in order to make room for more cargo operations?
Okay, about half of you voted. Very active. For like 10 seconds, more than half of you
Great.
voted.
I'll also note that there's a comment that there are more than 1,800 carpenters ready, willing, and able to build the vertical parking structure. Carpenters Local 805 is ready. Just say when. So, great excitement about the future.
Okay, I will go ahead and share results of this one as well.
Right, 90% in favor of continuing to move buildings and relocate them in order to make room for more cargo operations. Do we have one more, or was that it for this section?
We have one more
Okay.
before the next polling, yes. Last one, very quick one. Thank you.
Is it important to you that there are more diverse logistics offerings available in the greater Oxnard-Hueneme area? So is this something that's important to you, that there's greater diversity of logistics offerings? And while we're waiting, Donna, I'll just note that there's a question in the Q&A that said, when you update the power system, are the SES cranes going to be done at the same time? So that doesn't have to be done twice at twice the cost. And I do think that it's a great reminder that, you know, there are a number of different projects all kind of touching the same areas that could potentially have some overlapping benefits. And the sequencing, you know, is important. And of course, the sequencing with regard to doing the work, with finding the funding sources is all going to be a part of the long-term plan.
Okay, I will end the polling and share results on this last portion of the questions.
Okay, 88% said yes, that is important. There was also clarification, what do we mean by logistics opportunities? And I think this simply means the broad ecosystem of logistics services and offerings outside the port area. Are there enough? Are they diverse enough? Are there more services that are necessary? I think that was the intention. Great. Okay. So I'd like to now hand it over to Frank Pina, who will discuss some of the related and off-port opportunities. Frank?
Thank you very much, Josh. And I want to briefly go over an off-port expansion undertaking by the port. There's neutral news and there's good news. The neutral news is that the port increasingly is a victim of its own success, growth, and the good news is that it's working on solutions to address this. In 2016, the port undertook an off-port expansion program, and that required it looking for areas of port-centric, port-related growth. This was a result of an increasing critical lack of land for not only itself, but as importantly, if not more importantly, its clients' growing volumes, which after an assessment of operating utilization rates and capacity, it was discovered that both the port and its clients oftentimes were operating above 100% capacity, which of course, long-term is not a sustainable situation. So it takes this comprehensive off-port assessment of expansion possibilities in Ventura County, whose main goals were to identify opportunities for this expansion and how to do so, increase cargo capacity by leveraging off of the existing port infrastructure at the port to increase cargo throughput under the same footprint at the port through using additional land banks off port. And this would, of course, increase cargo velocity, cargo throughput, and guarantee the port's long-term competitive viability in an industry where this is not a given. From a port client survey, there was 2 areas of expansion and location. The first large circle is a 2-mile radius. The second large circle is a 6-mile radius. And that depends on the type of cargo that we're talking about. As you can see from this aerial picture of the county, the main areas, if not almost exclusively, where there might be usable land is located in the city of Oxnard. You'll also note this red thick line, that's part of the strategic corridor, which exists for defense purposes and is also a major conduit for commercial traffic, which is heavily relied upon by port clients. So any type of expansion opportunities, land or port related developments should be on or near this strategic corridor. A phase 1 possibility is one that the port's been working on for several years now, and that is located roughly in the intersection of the 2 concentric circles, the first large one and then the second smaller one in that area. This is slated to be a potential port-related logistics park, which will result in being a major catalyst for cargo and job growth. So the main goal of all of this is to significantly increase cargo throughput and velocity, expand the port's growing position as the county's largest economic engine, enhance the port's role as a catalyst, in creating family-sustaining jobs, which is, as Kristen mentioned early on, one of the main objectives of the port's existence, and have, interestingly, one of the largest positive environmental impacts that the county can experience by increasing the rail share of the intermodal mix of cargo, rail being the most environmentally positive transportation mode on land. The most environmental is on water shipping, and consolidating port activity instead of throughout the county along this strategic corridor. So in effect, this is your port making sure it will continue to make cargo move well into the 21st century.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Excellent. Okay, so we have a handful of off-terminal questions, polling questions, Donna. I believe we start with question 7. We have 4 questions here. Thank you. What is important to you in off-port support facilities? You can select, I believe it's more than one. No, it's the top choice. So you have to pick your top choice. It's A, truck parking, B, rail ramp facilities, C, processing a warehouse space, D, open laydown areas, or E, other.
Okay, about 55% have voted. Let's keep voting. About another 10 seconds, 65% have voted, and
Sure.
if I see it.
And as you're voting, again, if you have any questions in particular with regard to off-terminal priorities, again, please feel free to drop them into the chat, and we will have an opportunity to hear your comments. Oh, thank you. Okay, so 43% of you said processing a warehouse space is important to you in your off-port support facilities. The next largest was an open laydown area, followed by truck parking and some others. So perhaps other could be all of the above. It could be maybe some reefer related cold storage. But thank you. Very interesting. The processing warehouse space, top choice. Next question, please. All right, so this is a question about containers. So how many miles off terminal would you or your operations be willing to travel to make use of off-terminal logistics or storage facilities specific to containers? Our next question will be specific to autos. So.
About 42% of you have voted. If we can allow a little more time. For any more votes, if anybody hasn't voted yet. I'm not seeing it move anymore, so I will go ahead and end it and show you the results.
Okay, so 0 to 5 miles was the top choice, 46%, and about nearly 30% were okay with 6 to 10 miles, 23%, 11 to 20. Thank you.
And the next one, as Josh mentioned, is specific for autos.
Josh, you'll probably catch this, but there are some comments coming up in the chat.
Yes.
On that last one. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this one is for autos, and it looks like so the distance depends on how far the overweight corridor runs from the port. So again, okay, so that overweight corridor sort of drives what your choice might be. So yes.
That's a good point.
Good point. And then another point, so looking at the growth opportunities, it appears that annexing the Channel Islands Harbor is a viable growth option. Thank you for that comment. That was a comment also from last night, looking at extending the port's governance reach to include Channel Islands Harbor. Thank you for that.
Okay, about 40% have voted. I'm not seeing it move anymore. Maybe a few more seconds before I end it.
And while we were voting, I gave you a sneak peek of the next slide. We'll keep it here until we
Saw
finish
that.
the voting.
Okay, we're almost there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Share the results.
Okay, again, no surprise that you would like to stay as close as possible. Obviously, that is the, that allows for the highest velocity, right? But there is a tolerance, it looks like, for distances of 6 to 10, 11 to 20 miles. Again, I think you're right that it does depend on the where the processing facilities are, where the storage facilities are, and in relation to that overweight and strategic corridor.
Okay.
Next question.
I think we're done with the
was that it?
off-terminal polling
Great.
questions, Josh, yes.
Great. All right. All right. So I'd like to bring Christina back online to talk about some of the green infrastructure and the transition to green technologies.
Great, thank you, Josh. So as we had discussed before, I think any of our growth, we want to make sure that we're a leader in sustainability and environmental sustainability while we manage our growth. So some of the projects that we've already moved forward with, we did overhaul all of our lighting on port so that it's LED. It's longer lasting, it's more efficient than traditional lighting. It's a cleaner light and increases safety and efficiency on port, and also reduces light pollution. We also had our, as Josh mentioned earlier, increased our shoreside power capabilities so that the reefer vessels coming in can actually plug in and turn off their auxiliary engines and just use the grid power to be able to, while they're in port and doing cargo operations. As we discussed, we are doing some projects to make sure that we can plug in some of the mobile harbor cranes that just joined the port, and also some infrastructure to be able to plug in electric trucks for doing any cargo operations. We're also looking at increasing any of that capability for yard equipment as we move to zero emissions, so that as the fleets are switched out, that we have the capability to be able to plug in. We also have battery storage on port. And as you can imagine, if you plug in one of those reefer vessels, you have a large charge and kind of a peak use of the power when you're plugging in a large vessel like that. So the battery storage actually charges at night when the power is greener and cleaner. And so it shaves off that peak shaving off of that usage so that it doesn't impact the grid quite as much. If you were involved in the workshop yesterday, you heard Giles Pettifor, our environmental manager, talk about the clean air plan that we have in collaboration with Ventura County Air Pollution Control District. And that is really kind of the meat and potatoes as we move forward to set our goals and how we're going to meet those specific goals for the clean air plan from the port as we move into the future. We also are looking in how, and part of this process, about how we demolish obsolete buildings so that we can make sure that we're enhancing and reducing congestion, reducing emissions, and making sure as we grow that we're doing it as sustainable as possible. A lot of our projects, as I think some of the comments had brought up, is looking into the infrastructure for the future to be able to plug in, and also looking at opportunities of what kind of alternative power or fuel sources may be utilized on port as we move into that direction. All right. Thank you, Josh.
Great. Thank you, Christina. All right, so we just have a handful of questions, 3 polling questions, I believe, and then we'll open it up and give you the opportunity to have a discussion, let us know your comments. Okay, the first polling question is now up. Do you think your electrical power requirements will increase in the future? Yes, significantly, yes, somewhat, no, or unsure. I know that the port knows that its electrical power requirements are likely to increase. And I think there is some concern about the capacity of the utility to meet those increases. And in fact, I think that is not unique to Port Hueneme or Oxnard, but really throughout the state of California. But we would like to hear from you. What do you think is the likely future demand on your part for electrical power?
Yeah, I'm seeing it move. So more people are voting. We'll allow another 10, 15 seconds so they can finish voting. Good participation. Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and show you now.
Okay, so 73% said yes significantly, another 23% said yes somewhat. I mean, that is a really, really strong indication that the future demand is going to increase. 10% were unsure. Thank you very much for that. Move on to the next question. Which of the environmental sustainability projects do you believe would yield the greatest benefits, operational benefits to you? Would they be A, hybrid cranes, and you may pick more than one. A, hybrid cranes, B, zero emission terminal equipment, such as UTRs, that's on terminal tractors, trucks really, on terminal trucks. Electric or hybrid vans, electric locomotives, shoreside power, which is the plugging in of vessels so that they can turn off their auxiliary engines while they're at berth, or zero emissions drayage trucks. And while you're voting, there's a comment that came in. It would be nice to see in any of these future projects that it includes a more robust stormwater runoff and capture versus the current BMPS that run off direct into the ocean. So thank you. It's a good reminder that, again, within the infrastructure, the environmental impacts of that infrastructure is important to take into consideration. And stormwater runoff is one of those things that should be incorporated into any future infrastructure improvements that may be made. Good comment. Thank you. All right, so we have the results. 77% suggested that shoreside power or plugging in of vessels would have the greatest operational benefits to you. Then we have another kind of 49% of the zero emission terminal equipment UTRs, followed closely by zero emission drayage trucks, hybrid cranes. Thank you very much. I think probably the least useful, but that's not to mean not useful at all, would be electric locomotives or electric or hybrid vans. Oops. Great. I think we have one more poll question, then we'll open up the chat line. All right. So do you plan to electrify your operations? Yes, in the next 5 years. Yes, a little bit longer term than that, next 5 to 10 years. Yes, further out than that, after our 10-year plan. You're unsure, or really it's not applicable to you.
About half of you have voted, so we're almost there. Okay, it's not moving anymore, so I will share this with you.
Okay, so 27% said yes, in the next 5 years, you plan to electrify your operations. 42% said it's not really applicable, which is, fair enough. And then another 12% were unsure. So in total, there are about 45% said yes, you do plan to electrify sometime within the next 5, 10 or more years. Well, thank you. So that concludes the online polling portion, Donna, and I believe this is the section where if any of the attendees would like to make a comment verbally, in addition to writing in the chat box, they can raise their hand in the feature, the raise your hand feature of the Zoom webinar, and you will invite them in to have up to 2 minutes of time to make a comment or question or observation, just so that we can make sure that we have enough time to incorporate everyone's comments or feedback. So if you do have a comment or question or would like to speak, we do invite you now at this time to indicate so in with the raise your hand feature.
Yeah, once you raise your hand, I will be able to move you into the section where you could speak, and also you could also have your camera on if you choose to do so. I have Martin Rodriguez, so I will go ahead and allow you to speak now, Martin, and you can start your camera if you'd like to. Hello, Martin, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Hello.
Yes, this is Martin Rodriguez, business agent for the Ironworkers Local 433 and president of Tri-County Building Trades. And quite a robust plan and a very good presentation you have here. And we represent 7,500 construction personnel that are ready, willing, and able to do this project. And we appreciate you asking for our input. And I hope we're also understanding that in order to get these sustainable energy projects underway, it's important to maintain a viable oil and gas industry. And I thank you for your time.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
for your comments, Martin. Thank you. Okay, next we have Richard Fine. Just 1 minute. Okay, Richard. You should be able to speak now and use your camera if you'd like. Hello, Richard?
Richard, you are still on mute, although it looks like your camera is coming online. See if there's a way you can unmute yourself. And while we're waiting for you to get that, I'll just again read off a comment you had.
No,
Oh, you're back. Here you are. Great. Thank you.
took a second or two. Okay, well, I'm the one that came up with a number of, I'll call them operational questions. And you covered a few of them, but I have one more. And that's with respect to the I believe it's the Mandalay Beach peaking plant, which I understand is going to become, go offline pretty soon. And if that's the truth, I am suggesting that maybe the port may want to acquire that plant and use it as an extra source for energy, and that way cutting down its own energy expenses. And that would be one of the things. And I'm looking at the energy expenses of the port, and the more that the port can go in and do its own energy expenses and cutting them down. As you know, a lot of operations do cogeneration and a lot of other things, therefore cutting out the profit, shall we say, that the utility companies may be making. And that's going to be a big savings for the port itself. And as the port tends to go into all electric, it's going to have to deal with the fact of, number one, where's that electricity going to be coming from and how can they cut down their costs?
Yeah.
If the port ends up owning its own peaking plant, and maybe as time goes on, even using that plant for the energy that it produces. And last night, when we brought up the issue of different ways of generating, and I don't know if there's a Gulf Stream close to us, but one of the ways of generating electricity is putting turbines into the Gulf Stream. And if there is a Gulf Stream that is near us, I don't know how far out it is, but if we can put turbines into that stream, you have a constant source of electricity. I know that in Hawaii, we used to have a place out in Hawaii, that in Hawaii, they're using wave power. If there are places that the port can put in turbines into the wave power, that's another source of constant electricity. So I'm not recommending windmills because there's really no, well, you can put windmills in if the port wants to acquire land up in the hills and keep it and do something to protect the windmills from the fires. And if you want to do that and put the windmills in, that's going to be another source because the wind is really blowing in Ventura County in the hill areas. So you can do it in that way. The other thing.
Thank you, Richard, for your comments.
Okay, I'll cut it off there.
We appreciate it.
Acquiring the port, the Channel Islands Harbor, which I noticed is in the growth place, right at the place where you could acquire it. And that's going to give you other aspects of land plus income. That's it.
Right. Thank you, Richard.
very
Excellent
much.
comments. Thank you. Any other comments we have? If you would like to raise your hand now, this is an opportunity to do so. This is not your only opportunity. We have had many discussions with the attendees. Also have, you may submit your questions and comments after the fact via email. And of course, this presentation will be posted online, as we said, at the port's website. So.
Do we have any questions in the chat or Q&A from anyone?
I am not seeing any other Q&A questions, and I have not.
Okay.
seen
Okay,
any
I am
chats.
seeing Richard's hand is up again. I believe he may want to have another opportunity to make comments. So let me check in with him. Okay, Richard, you should be able to be heard now.
Okay, well, just finishing off, the basically from what I'm seeing here, and I'm really speaking as a former resident of Oxnard Shores and now a resident of Fort Hueneme, I'm really looking at the many ways that the port can go out and cut down its costs and at the same time expand its business opportunities. Because in the beginning, there was a comment that the port really isn't interested in income. And I don't know if that was a true comment or not, but basically as a resident of Port Hueneme, I want to see the port get out there and expand its income as much as it possibly can, because that benefit comes directly to me as a resident of the Oxnard district. And so the more that the port can expand, the more income that it can bring in, and bring it in a way that is efficient and a direct benefit to the residents through good environmental protection, is the best thing going. I mean, it's absolutely very much the best thing. So looking at all these things overall, what land can be acquired, how can the port expand, taking its operations and putting them off the port directly if it possibly can. So all these things coming together is a benefit to the residents. And if we can do it in an environmentally safe way, there aren't going to be any complaints from the residents. Now, mind you, there will always be environmental discussions. I mean, in my history, I've been involved in dealing with putting a power plant into Mendocino County. You can imagine what happens there. So it's a situation that you have to balance all of these things. And if you get to zero emissions, well, it is terrific. And I think the port can do that. So basically, you have all this coming together. I mean, there's one suggestion I did not put in because I don't think we're really ready for it, and that is to deal with the shipping companies so that they can actually tag their cargo to be able to show the ultimate destination of the cargo on the container, to put that into the trucking company or the railroad and the later trucking company, so that when the cargo comes in, it can be offloaded directly onto the truck if it's going locally, and that truck can just take it right on to the ultimate destination. Or it's going to be in a destination in the Midwest, it can possibly be offloaded onto something that will take it to the train and take it directly in. That would be the ultimate thing that we could do. I don't think we are there at this point in time, but someday we will get there. But at the same time, I think the port is doing a really terrific job. And I like the fact that the port is the #1 green port. I mean, that is an amazing thing. So the port's doing well and where it's at right now. And I'm, as a resident, I'm very, very interested in seeing the port going along that direction and everything that it can do to get there. I'm in
Great.
favor.
Well, thank you, Richard. Really appreciate your support, your comments, your thoughtful questions. Thank you very much. I'll move on now to another chat question that came in. This is in regard to the growth of container volumes. So with container volumes doubling recently, what is the plan to accommodate the space for 4 cranes working simultaneously? So this is a question about some of the specifics for operating and accommodating the future growth on the footprint. And undoubtedly, there will be some phasing, right? Some near-term operating considerations combined with some longer-term infrastructure planning as part of this 10-year strategic plan. So thank you for the question, and we'll make sure to have the port staff reach back out to you with further details.
Armando Delgado has his hand up, so I'm going to allow him into speaking option. Hello, Armando, can you hear us?
Absolutely, thank you. I was had to pull over. I was driving.
You're welcome. Hello.
First and foremost, thank you everyone, and hello Donna, Joshua, and Christine. Excellent presentation and excellent interaction with the public from our community here. Again, this is Armando with Carpenters Local 805, and speaking on behalf of 1,800 professional union carpenters from our local 805. You know, we are ready. We are ready for any project that may come out of your forward thinking. You know, thousands of working men and women, including professional union carpenters, would find their livelihoods at risk if it wasn't for partnerships like ours with the port and the other trades. You know, where environmental goals must include protections for working people, they are just when they include the local community and just give opportunity for everyone. We like that you're thinking of vertical growth instead of you know, we've heard the community. A lot of people opposed to the expansion, but expansion doesn't always mean outward. Upward can always benefit you guys. And again, I just want to chime in and say, hey, we're ready for the 28 scopes of work that you may provide for us. And I'd like to say, we haven't talked in a while, but we had a lot of opportunities for new tradesmen, new apprentices that came through to our projects there on the port, and they're now successful moving forward. And it was because of the partnership with us and the trades that we were able to bring some of our community members on board. So, hey, let's move forward, and we can't wait to see what else you got planned for us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Armando.
Great. We have another question come in through the chat. As the port deepens its berths to accommodate larger and more vessels, Have there been discussions about potentially lengthening the berths inland? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Great. That's a great question. That's definitely falling in the category of kind of a longer term project. There have in the past been designs to kind of high level designs to look at that. But I think for this coming 10-year plan, I think the ambition is to define projects that can be realized in the near term, medium term, and then as part of this 10-year strategic plan to really nail down what is the long-term infrastructure at the port going to look like. So definitely that's a question I think will be addressed during the 10-year plan.
I don't see any hands up so far, but I'm wondering if anybody would like to say something from our partners, operators.
And if you would be more comfortable speaking in Spanish or Mixteco, you know, that's fine too. Raise your hand, we'll let you in. You can indicate that to us when you've unmuted your microphone, and we'll bring in our interpreter. That's we have the capabilities for that.
Oh, I'm seeing hands. Okay, wonderful. Jay Prosh has his hand raised, so I will go ahead and allow him to speak now and start his camera if you'd like to. Hello, Jay.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Hello.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Donna. So the first question or comment would be, and I know you had the question about gantry cranes on the port, the STS gantries. From YAR's perspective, we're in favor of that as we, for the most part, take second priority to the container vessels. And with the increase in container vessels coming into the port, our window of opportunity to bring our vessels in has gotten smaller. So I see a gantry crane as a way for us to speed the container ships in and out, and you guys would see increased volume coming and going, and it would open up opportunities for YAR. So that's my comment on that. The second thing I just want to throw out there as a question: has the port ever considered anything for truck drivers? One of the biggest complaints I have for truck drivers coming out here, especially the ones that are not local, that are coming from further distances or out of state, is there's nowhere to park, there's nowhere to take a rest period. They can't do it on the port, and I understand that. The city is very untruck friendly, I think you all agree with that. So have they ever considered partnering or with possibly another venture? It could be a moneymaker, having some type of truck stop off port at another site. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jay, and questions. We'll address them as part of the strategic plan, but I thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, Donna, maybe we just give just a few more moments for anyone else who wants to raise their hand. And if not, we can move on to closing down the session and describing the next steps.
I believe there was one more person. Let me see who it was. From Josh.
Chat box.
Oh, in the chat. Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yes. Josh, let's address the chat box before we end, please.
Okay.
The last one.
From Josh, is deepening
Yes.
the, okay. Oh, sure. So, this is the question: as the port deepens its berths to accommodate larger and more vessels, have there been discussions about potentially lengthening the berths inland? Thank you. I think yes. As I mentioned previously, there are a number. There was a design drawing, conceptual drawing about changing the inlet shape, and certainly, as I think, from what we've been hearing, as part of this 10-year plan, there is a desire to focus on infrastructure, focus on near-term improvements, medium-term improvements that we'd like to see over the coming 10 years. But then also during this 10-year strategic plan, really kind of nail down what's the port going to look like over the long term. Really longer term, a decades long vision. And of course, a reminder that all of your, many of you have participated in the one-on-one sessions over the past 12 to 15 months. And so all of your comments will be incorporated into this strategic plan, regardless of whether you mentioned it today or 6 months ago in the one-on-one. So we thank you for your contribution to the thinking and the planning that goes into this long-range strategic plan.
Okay, Kristen, would you like to say a few last words?
Sure.
Closing?
So first of all, thank you everyone for your participation today. The answers were really, to all the polls, really informative and helpful in helping us kind of lay out the future renderings for the port. We really are trying to hone in on the precise and developments that we want to move forward with as this funding opportunities are on the horizon, and just making sure that we're making smart, astute investments that are going to be for the long haul for our port community and customers. So important to what we do here. So really pleased with the participation. We will be tracking all of the questions that came up in chats, and we will be putting them out there in email and posted on our website, and they will be answered in different languages so that everyone can translate them and understand the questions that were given today and have answers to them. And then we'll continue to interface with our port stakeholders and friends as we start doing some of the renderings based on the information that came out today, to make sure that we are moving in the right direction and everyone's on board and we're making smart decisions here. So important, as I said in the beginning, it's important we sharpen our axe before we start cutting. So thank you for working with us today. I think it was a really productive session. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you to all of you.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for your time.
And don't forget to come and get your vaccine if you haven't. We got them Monday. They're here. All right, J&J, 10 to 3. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.